Welcome to the dark side.
Greetings, I am Lord Bruticus, and this is Dark Side Chat number 11. The People vs. George Lucas is an upcoming feature-length documentary where fans of Star Wars have the opportunity to speak their minds about their likes and dislikes with the Star Wars franchise and the creator of their favorite galaxy far, far away. I recently had the honor and privilege of speaking on the phone with the director of this upcoming movie. Some of his recent short films include the movie Left, which screened at 35 international film festivals and won a handful of big awards. His most recent one, The Spot, just won the Best Documentary Award at Imago in Portugal, one of the top short film festivals in Europe. He is also working on a pretty large-scale documentary about the Tibetan struggle for freedom, which was shot in India and China throughout the year 2008. He was second unit director on that project, and it should come out in May of 2009. His name is Alexander Philippe, and I recently spoke with him about his role as director of The People vs. George Lucas. Here now is my conversation with Alexander Philippe.
Well, hi there. You're the director of The People vs. George Lucas, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. The project originated, in my mind, a few years ago, but our director of photography and producer, one of our producers, he and I were in Texas with the rest of our crew last year, working on some other projects, and we ended up talking about Star Wars just about every day. And when I told him about the idea of The People vs. George Lucas, he, instantly thought it was a great idea for a documentary, and he's really the one who pushed me to make it happen, and here we are.
Well, the People vs. George Lucas is certainly an attention-grabbing title. Can you briefly describe how you came up with the name for the project, and really what the project entails?
Sure. Definitely, there's no question that the title is a little bit, provocative, but I want to be clear about the intent of the film. We're not out to demonize George Lucas. It's, it is a documentary, film, and it's really important for us to look at both sides of the argument. There's really something that's fascinating to me about Star Wars fans, the fact that you put two of them in the room, and I'm one of them. There's a constant argument about George Lucas, about Star Wars, about what could have been done differently, what could have been better. And there's a very unique love-hate relationship, I think, that Star Wars fans, or even George Lucas fans, have towards George Lucas. And so the idea behind the film is to create a portrait, really, of George Lucas as seen from the perspective of the very strong feelings that people have towards him, feelings of love, feelings of hate, and to try to understand where exactly do these feelings come from, where do they come from? My theory is that I think it would be impossible for people to say, I hate George Lucas, if they didn't have a profound love for the man in the first place.
Now, your website says that this is a audience participatory film. I know that a lot of fans are submitting videos of themselves saying what they like and dislike about Star Wars, and I was wondering, how do you plan on putting that together?
Well, that's really what makes our film or documentary quite unique, is the fact that anybody, anywhere in the world with access to the video camera can actually submit footage to us, and it's been really tremendous to see the reaction again from around the world. People have been contacting us, submitting footage.
Going by the name of the title alone, it almost sounds like you're putting everything in a courtroom type setting. Is that what you plan on doing?
No, not really. I think we've actually had some submissions that do take place in a courtroom setting. We're using the idea of a debate. We're sort of focusing on that debate very seriously, in the sense that there's going to be a lot of back and forth. And so if somebody makes a very strong argument for the defense, then somebody right after that is going to have to make a strong argument for the prosecution in some level. I'm not sure yet stylistically where that's going to take us. I think the footage that we get ultimately will define the look of the film.
Well, one of the questions that people ask me when I tell them about The People vs. George Lucas is, are they going to release this in theaters? And so I have to ask you, do you plan to release this movie in theaters or on DVD or both?
Oh, absolutely. Our intent is to release the film in theaters. Obviously, this also depends on distribution. We have some distributors who are already interested, and there's a few interesting ideas floating around in terms of how we could release this film theatrically. And again, I think part of what will determine this is, you know, how enthusiastic audiences are for this film. You know, we're definitely relying a lot on the word of mouth right now, and it's definitely working. We have a number of big publications that are going to talk about us in the near future. We have a big press release that we're about to, you know, to send out. And so I think that, you know, the next few months, in fact, the next year is going to be very, very interesting for us to see exactly how much people anticipate this film. And, you know, of course, the bigger the crowd, probably the wider the release. But, you know, I think it's pretty safe to say that we'll have some kind of a theatrical release, hopefully not too limited. And then after that, we'll go into, you know, DVD release. I'm sure probably some cable, you know, release as well. And ultimately, of course, we have to do our own, you know, special edition with, you know, with a ton of additional footage and probably a lot of the fan footage that couldn't be included in the film.
You're not going to let fans know that submit footage if they're going to be included in the film or not. I take it you're going to leave that as a surprise in the movie when it is released.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it's becoming more and hard to, you know, to keep track. I mean, I try to be as personal as possible. I mean, I definitely make the effort to reply to every single person who emails me, who contacts me, who asks questions. You know, sometimes obviously the response time takes a while, and as time goes by, it may become, you know, much more difficult or harder even for me to you know, to get back to them. But so I do my best. One thing I've pledged is to look at every single bit of footage that you know, that arrives here. I think it's really important to make sure that we see everything, even though at some point I might have to delegate, you know, a little bit more to my producers as well. One thing that I can guarantee is that everybody who submits will be credited at the end of the film, because even if their footage is not included in the film, they did participate in some way. And so that's why I think that the release of a DVD special edition is important, because we want to be able to include some of the footage as well that was not, you know, that we couldn't include in the film.
Well, another big question that everyone's been asking me that I tell about the project is when can we hope to see this in theaters, or when is it going to be completed? So, but when can we hope to see the final result of this project?
Sure. Well, you know, that's a big question that I've actually been asking myself for a while. And what's really kind of interesting is, you know, the more we work on it, the more people we discover, the more great stuff we find. And the deeper and more complex the subject matter becomes, which is great, but it's also daunting. And so, of course, my number one objective is to make sure that we make, you know, the best possible film, and that certainly it takes time. Originally, our intent was to release the film by the end of 2009. Right now, I would be tempted to say it's probably going to take a few more months. I think we should probably look at spring 2010, and I really don't want to go past that, because again, there's a lot of excitement, and we want to make sure that we don't lose the excitement for this film. So it's kind of striking that fine balance between the two. You know, so I think that's you know, that's a fairly you know, realistic goal. And of course, that when I say spring 2010, that means probably festival premieres around that time. You know, we intend obviously to unleash the film first in a number of festivals. And then hopefully shortly after that, we'll get into theatrical release, who knows, maybe summer 2010, and then, you know, DVDs following that.
But one thing that I always ask the guests on my silly little show, the Dark Side Chats, is if you had one thing to say to George Lucas in person, or ask him, what would that be?
Well, you know, in my particular case, that's an easy one. I think that if I had anything to say to George is, George, you know, please participate in our film. You know, we've already asked him to via Steve Sansweet, who's the head of fan relations, and you know, we've been very courteously turned down. Of course, we're not going to stop. We're going to continue to knock on the door.
Well, thank you, Alexander, so much for your time and your willingness to chat right here on the Dark Side Chats.
Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate, you know, being interviewed, and hope that this will bring many fans to you know, be intrigued about the project, and hopefully they'll want to participate as well.
Next time on the Dark Side Chats, I speak with the producer from The People vs. George, Mr. Robert Muratori. Also, I speak with a Jedi Slimeball, Master, a fellow geek who's been collecting Star Wars memorabilia for so long that Most of his collection is in storage. Until next time, may the dark side be with you always.